You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome, everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It's Thursday, May 29th, 2025. It's 7:37 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And tonight I thought I would talk about hypervigilance as it relates to attachment conditioning. One of the things about hypervigilance is that it can actually affect any of the attachment systems, and it comes from role reversal in the parent-child relationship. And because you can be role reversed in any of the attachment presentations, everybody can be affected by it if it happens. It does tend to appear differently depending on how that happens. Even secure people can be hypervigilant. Usually what it means is that you have to take on some responsibility for the emotional regulation of the caregivers. And that if you don't do that, they can get out of control, which affects the environment for the child. And so the child becomes vigilant on the moods and looks for ways to affect the mood of the child, of the caregiver. Of course, children taking care of and attempting to regulate adults is what the problem is, because the vigilance comes with a child trying to take care of an adult, which produces a sense of anxiety in the child, mainly. In dismissing adults, the vigilance, let's see how to explain this. The vigilance takes on a sensitivity. You might even call it a pseudo empathy as part of this, because in dismissing people, because their main strategy for regulating their emotion is the suppression of emotion, and they suppress the attachment system. What they're really looking for is how it is that they're supposed to idealize their presentation for the purpose of providing for the caregivers the thing that they want so that they'll receive care. So this is a teleological, non-mentalizing stance, really. When we say teleological, it means that you're vigilant about the external presentation of the other person, but you don't necessarily have good empathy to compare it to your own feeling states. A dismissing person, for instance, would not be able to compare their teleological understanding of somebody else's experience with their own feeling states, because they don't really have them. They wouldn't be able to compare the teleological second level of empathy presentation with the third level of compassionate empathy. They don't feel it. And they're unlikely to inquire as to what the state is, if they've made up their mind about it. Strongly dismissing people are good at eliciting information from other people in order to understand what state that they're in. And that would continue to happen. Get the inquiry. It's a kind of pumping for information so that they can deliver a idealized version of it back. But it remains teleological because there's no real exchange of experience. In preoccupied people, because the preoccupied person loses track of their own emotional experience and replaces their primary emotional experience with the empathetic person, the empathetic experience of another person, it still remains teleological and a more complete form of pseudo-empathy because um, the the genuine empathy is this ability to take in the emotional experience of someone else, regulate it, and send it back, and regulate your own emotional experience back to the other person, which they don't really do. Uh, in both of these non-mentalizing modes, the teleological mode, you don't actually inquire whether your interpretation of what you're experiencing is what the other person is experiencing. So you assume that your interpretation is correct. Is that making sense? Disorganized people, it's very chaotic, fearfully preoccupied people. Their internal emotional state is very close to tantrum mode a lot of the time. And so they don't really or aren't able to really distinguish their own experience from the empathetic experience. Uh, uh, all of these um, vigilant states are also more self-oriented than actually oriented in a genuine experience of the other person. The preoccupied person is looking at the way that somebody appears to them so that they can figure out how they can ask implicitly for the things that they want from them. The outward explicit expression is always some form of "I'll take care of you," but actually the main purpose of that, from the point of view of a preoccupied person, is "and then you'll take care of me in the way that I need." And so it's always about the undercurrent of care that's being solicited from the other person rather than a genuine effort to provide care for the other person. In fact, they don't really understand what care the other person needs beyond what they interpret it to be. And because there isn't that collaborative exchange of what kind of care the other person needs and how to do it, it often isn't useful in that sense. Um, Fearful avoidant people uh, also don't um, accurately track, so teleologically tracking. But the vigilance is really about a fearfulness of being harmed. This is also anybody who's disorganized, really. The issue of vigilance is about, will I be harmed or not? Will this person harm me or not? Will this person revert to their true nature and reveal that they've fooled me, and I will have again put myself in a position to be harmed by them? Is that making sense? You might notice an exaggerated startle response in people who are vigilant. Uh, Somebody honks you, you just move over half a lane for no reason. Automatically, without looking. And all of this, the underlying thing about all of this is that role reversing, where you have to engage in the regulation of the other person. One of the things that's interesting about hypervigilance also is um, the outward appearance of it can sometimes look like passivity and not vigilance. Because any of the attachment styles, in addition to role reversing, can also have rejection. And so when you have a combination of role reversing and rejection, what it tends to produce in the other person is a passivity or the appearance of passivity. So the child is hyper vigilant to the needs of the caregiver, but should the child make the mistake of presenting their own needs to the caregiver is consistently rejecting of them. And so the vigilance is hidden by this this passive presentation. And that can be true of any of them, because the rejection role reversing can apply to any of the different attachment strategies. But you'll notice that in say a great sense of detachment in uh, a um, a dismissing person, really complete shutdown of the attachment system, complete shutdown of the emotional system. They're very detached as a result of that. And you can actually get somebody who's preoccupied, who appears, for all intents and purposes, to be dismissing a passively preoccupied person, because they're behind that wall. And then the disorganized people also behind the wall of passivity. But it looks a little bit more like invisibility in the disorganized people. They really um, hide. I often think of the Harry Potter invisibility cloak, and they're hiding behind the invisibility cloak and getting more and more steamed because you can't see them till they erupt because they can't manage it. Yeah, El?
How does that like detachment or passivity kind of display itself like in real life? What would that look like?
In a passively preoccupied person, what you would notice is that they agree to everything.
Mm.
Then they do what they want.
Mhm.
And if they get called out on it, they again agree to everything. And
Mhm.
then they do what they want.
Okay.
There's never a coherence between that. In in a dismissing person, they tend to get very uh, cold and analytical
Mm.
response to that.
Mm.
Disorganized people disappear. That's the way that they do it.
Huh.
That
So
makes
what does
sense.
that mean like by disappearing? Just like hide from the world or just like
Well, they'll withdraw from the engagement.
mm.
They'll agree to everything and then disappear. What were you thinking?
Just like I kind of was thinking disappear as in more like isolation or something.
Yeah, that's the experience for the dis the disorganized person. But the experience of you with them is that there's a conflict in the relationship. You don't know about it because they don't express it, and then they're gone.
Mm. That
Uh,
makes sense.
and then a little while later, they'll come back as if nothing happened,
Mm.
including the interval of time that they were away. But you know that there is actually no limit to how long that they could be away. I mean,
Mm.
an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade, uh, and then they show up. One of the interesting things about that, of course, is that when they do show up, the relationship is still alive for them because they've been thinking about it the whole time.
Mm.
But it might not still be alive for you if you haven't thought about it in a long time, because they just
Yeah,
disappeared without
that's interesting.
explanation. And then, of course, you can't really bring it up because they can't resolve it.
Mm.
Um, we're not really supposed to be, as children, vigilant about our caregivers. They're supposed to be paying attention to us and taking care of us. Uh, that's the dilemma. What you'll notice in some children around the age of 6 is, which is when the mind is developed enough for them to really take charge. You have the experience of a child who appears to be an adult at 6 years old, and they're uh, organizing things, and they're doing shopping lists, and they're figuring out what's supposed to be for dinner and all the rest of it. Organizing the caregiver so that the caregiver can perform the adult role that the the child needs in order for the child to get along. And you might even notice that the child moves out of the household into uh, school or some other place and attempts to perform well in order to get some kind of attention outside of the home, where the attention can be returned to them, particularly if there's a lot of rejection in the home. So what do you do about it, since the cause of it is relatively simple? And it really is in a big way impacting the capacity to present yourself authentically to someone else. Vigilant in taking care of the needs of the other person might produce in you a lack of experience of what's authentically yours. You'll also have a lack of support and encouragement to discover the things that you're good at, that matter to you, because you become oriented around what your caregiver responds to. So you get good at the things that the caregiver is responsive to, but not necessarily the things that you're responsive to or that you're good at. And as life goes on in that early period of life, in that mid-childhood period, is the development of this, what James Masterson would call the false self, that inauthentic self which we rely on in order to manage our caregivers. If the job is really difficult, what we also, for preoccupied people mainly, we abandon our exploration altogether in order to maintain the proximity we need in order to regulate the caregiver. Dismissing people, on the other hand, the relationship is more transactional, so they come and go from it. But because the care is so conditional for them, there is no real recognition of collaboration or no real sense that anyone would take care of you. And so you're always in a position of having to trade for care with the caregivers. I find that heartbreaking myself, but for disorganized people, the dilemma is often the caregiver that you're having to be vigilant about is also the abuser. And so the failure to navigate the vigilance and the responses can have terrible consequences, which you tend to blame yourself for. And what do we do with a highly developed false sense of self and a not very well developed authentic sense of self? Particularly when there's been difficult consequences in lapses of vigilance. We need to begin to take the risks of authenticity. I think that one of the differences between a childhood without the role of reversing and a childhood with the role of reversing is the depth of the conviction that you don't matter. And it makes it much harder to push through that. So we begin by, in the same way, of authentically presenting ourselves in the context of the relationship that we're in. One of the things about insecure and disorganized attachment is that we don't have a good sense of consent in relationships. We don't ask for consent. We don't feel that the giving or withholding of our own consent is going to make much of a difference in the way things go, because it didn't. I mean, none of these things are leaps or inventions, really. They're just really the processing of the experience that we had and understanding the rules. And we should say the rules of your family system, or the rules of my family system. What were the rules around consent between caregivers and children in your family system? And for a lot of us, it was our consent was irrelevant to what they wanted. Or some devalued version of consent. So what we need to do is begin to explore it. You know, the consent issue, when we take it out into the world, if we don't think consent matters, then we don't look for it in other people. And it's easy to get into conflict with people around that. And it can go either way. We don't consent to the level of intimacy that the other person wants, so we don't provide it. Or we don't understand that other people have to consent to us, our authentic expression, and so we overshare in the beginning parts of relationships. We may even be so blind to it that we don't pick up the cues of other people trying to set boundaries for us. And so what we'll notice is that all of a sudden the boundaries are absolutely rigid. And it makes no sense why they would suddenly be so stiff. Wouldn't you expect there to be a gradual increasing of boundaries if there was a problem? But there was all of that. We just didn't pick up on any of those cues because we have no sensitivity to it, because it wasn't part of our training. What you want to be able to do is to negotiate consent and begin to offer authentic expressions, but small, low risk authentic expressions, so that you can see how people do with them. You know, intimacy, vulnerability is of high value, and you want to make sure that the person that you're engaging with is relating to your expressions with commiserate value to them. It can be sometimes confusing, maybe is a good word, as to what is valuable and what isn't valuable if we grew up in a system, a family system, where there wasn't any value placed on our consent and how we were in some ways pushed into revealing at levels we weren't wanting to. So offering a little bit of an authentic expression and seeing how the person does. If they do well, offering a little bit more, seeing how they do, and in that process back and forth. We also want to keep track of the energy flows into relationships. You might be offering a little bit more intimacy in a relationship, but is that being reciprocated by the other person? Or are they just simply receiving it and not offering an exchange, keeping in balance? The main indicator that the energy flows in a relationship are out of whack is if you feel a resentment or they feel a resentment. If they feel a resentment, it means they're flowing more energy into the relationship than they're receiving back. And so they're angry about it. And if you're resenting them, it's because you're flowing too much energy into the relationship. when we don't have good relational negotiation skills, we can think that we can demand of them that they reciprocate in a way that we would find commiserate. But actually, that doesn't work so well. You can invite them, you can beckon them, but you can't demand. And then ultimately, you're responsible for the energy that you flow into the relationship. If you're overflowing energy into the relationship, it's on you to back that off, not on them to reciprocate. That makes sense. So you're the one who can keep it in balance. And then some people are quite good at eliciting energy, and they don't reciprocate. It's still on us to manage that. We can't get mad at them for beckoning us and us going when we didn't want to, or more than we did. I think that one of the things that happens to kids who grow up in family systems where hypervigilance is part of the package is the impact on exploration, personal exploration. And so we also have to reorient toward our own exploration, things that are meaningful to us. For a child to attempt to explore in a primary way what really matters to them might mean that they would have to separate from the caregiver. And then when they come back, the caregiver is dysregulated to a greater degree, which is much, much harder for the child then to try and rebalance. And so the urgency for the child to abandon their exploration is obvious and immediate. So it makes sense. But it does also translate into the thought processes around how we should view our own exploration. And it's easy for us to think that we should abandon that in relationships that we enter into. And that in some way that relationship will then provide the meaningfulness of that primary exploration, which relationships don't really do. It's one of these, you might even think of it as an indoctrination in the West, all based on, the princess and the prince. We should really trash that one anyway. Who wants a monarchy at this point? In the East, it might be different. Sex roles, of course, are in there. What's masculine, what's feminine, what roles, what activities are open based on that. What's acceptable in our culture and what confines you. All interfering with the gathering of meaning. So part of this vigilance, the hypervigilance, of course, is to recognize when your attention is going out and engaging in the mind state of someone else and catching yourself and pulling it back and returning it to your own experience over and over again, returning it to your own experience. If you are passive in the way that you do the vigilance, you need to begin to be authentic in your expression of yes or no, rather than inauthentically agreeing to everything and then doing what you want. This is a committing to actually what's happening. And I think that that's often the hardest part, because there's a kind of pleasantness that comes from being agreeable in that way, passive in that way. You agree to everything, so there's no conflict ever. If you offer an authentic no, there could be conflict or negotiation, which would then put you in a position of having to reveal your authentic position, which if you're unable to do, you would not be able to make an authentic no, which means ultimately you can't make an authentic yes either. And you'll find that people think of you as less and less reliable the more you say yes and don't actually show up to do it. So then even that passive going along loses its value. Turn your attention back to yourself. Begin to discover the things that matter to you, the things that provide meaning to you, and reorganize the world around pursuing those things. Now, if you've grown up in a family system and you've been role reversed and you've been providing care for your caregivers, they may not be so willing to have you just step off that and may be quite skilled at getting you to return your attention to them and to return the care to them. So there's going to be some renegotiation necessary. The one of the things that happens in unwinding this is that when you really get a perspective on it, it can make you so angry at the cost of it, because the cost is steep, that it disrupts the relationship with the caregivers. And estrangement is often one of the outcomes of that anger. There's a view that is inaccurate, that the caregivers actually recognized what they were doing and did it intentionally. And this is often not the case. That involvement and passivity is something that they learned in the family system. They grew up in the same family system you grew up in, right? They're the carriers of the rules of the family system. And they might think that it's perfectly appropriate for you, having been designated that role, that you fulfill it over the course of your lifetime with them. And the whole rest of the family might rally behind them because none of them want that role. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. You have to do it. It's not quite the worst role in a family. The golden child really is the worst one, because you have to perform your whole life, but not at the things that matter to you, but in the things that matter to somebody else. And all of the praise and all of the attention and all of the advantage only comes if you satisfy the requirements of someone else. And you are largely left out of that equation. So it's an empty kind of reward. Plus, if you have siblings, everybody hates you because you got more for no good explanation. The role then of the caregiver for the caregiver is one that completely truncates their development out of that system. And often they don't get away. Worked with several The caregivers lived into their they lived into their 50s in the caregiver role, and then the caregivers died, and it was as if they were to begin their life at 50. They'd always lived at home. Everything was always paid for. And if there isn't enough, they might even have to start making a living. It's a hard thing. Step back from that. You have your own purpose, your own sources of meaning. And the idea then is for you to pursue those and to make or renegotiate agreements with people so that that part you retain. I have a sense of sadness as I talk about this. That one of the things that's missing in those kinds of childhoods is the experience of the caregiver delighting in the child, delighting in the uniqueness, the natural innocence of the child, and supporting the development of that. Particularly if it's accompanied by rejection, all of that is silenced and absent. And so there's a struggle to begin to identify that sense of delight in yourself and also in other people delighting in you. That wonder that a child has in the discovery of everything. That loss of that freedom to run around the world discovering is absent. And of course, there isn't a way to go back and get that. It is lost. And that's a great sorrow. It's a paradox. That great sorrow is the way out and back into life. And if you can't or won't look at it, then you remain trapped behind it. Maybe it's unsurprising to you, but I had a role reversing mother, and when I think about her, it makes me sad. I think that she didn't mentalize it very well, and every now and then there was the sense that she recognized that she had wanted to be a good mother and that she didn't uh, take care of us well. And there was a sorrow in that. And how do you manage that? Of course, you recognize in her, or at least I was able to recognize in her, that she had wanted that, and at the same time not have to abandon that she didn't, which is where you, I think, lose yourself if you can't hold those two, if that was what your caregiver wanted. Another way to say that is, can you see them clearly and understand what their capacities were, and to not assume that they had the capacity to take care in a way that you needed and then didn't because of something about yourself. That's the usual solution. The good parent, bad child dynamic. Double bind, you can let go of one side or the other, or you can just let go of both sides. Let them be how they were. Understand what they were able to do and not able to do. Understand where you are now, because everything that's come before is already lost. And gather up what's left as I like to say, and make out of that a wonderful life. And it's going to be enough. How's that? Why don't we do some practice? Would you like to do heart practices or insight practices? Heart. It's in our community, it's nearly always a single vote that determines how we meditate. So let's do some loving kindness practice for an easy person and then for self. So go ahead and take your posture. Okay. Let go of the meditation. How's that? Good?
George, is the view, quick question, is the view proposing if I'm angry at the moment, then may I not have this negative emotion at this moment?
If you hold a view of anger and you replace the view of loving kindness, the emotional response tends to shift.
Immediately.
Well, what you have is the experience of viewing the anger through the loving kindness, so it has a whole different quality to it.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
I notice in sustaining that view over time, everything just takes on this appearance of being beautiful. It's an astonishing thing. And I mean, every little thing takes on that quality.
It's just that response of fear, for example, would make my heart beat fast, but taking the view doesn't really make the heart, go back to normal.
I would guess that it would slow it. What you would have really is a curiosity about it rather than a conviction about it. So you notice the body mind is reacting in anger, and there's a curiosity about it rather than a conviction that you should be angry. Oh, this is happening. As opposed to, I'm going to kill you. If I catch you. Hilarious. So Saturday is the end of the current level 1 that we're doing. And then we're going to do in June the exploration half days. So on the 21st of June is the intermediate mentalizing. And then on June 28th is the advanced mentalizing. This is about exploration, but I tend to talk about creative activities. And I thought, since I do a lot of writing, that I would talk about that process as well. So on the 27th is Kaleidoscope, which is our monthly Sangha meeting, which is about really a place to be able to ask questions about your current practice. That's in the morning. And then on July 3rd, we're going to start a meditation and attachment level 2 on Thursday afternoons at 4:30. And then on July 12th, we're going to start another round of level 1. And I think that, and on the 9th of August, we're going to begin meditation and addiction level 1. So those are the classes that will, I think, get us mostly through the summer. Oops. We're going to repeat the exploration classes in September on the 13th and on the 20th. So that's what's coming up this summer. Take a look at it. It's up on the website. happy to have you practice. I offer the teaching freely, but I do hope that if you're resourced and you can, make a donation. There's a link on the website to do that. Any amount is helpful. It's help support me and also the work that Mettagroup is doing. Really appreciate it. Nice to see you. And I hope to see you soon. Bye.